Imagine stepping out into a landscape where the air itself is actively trying to kill you. The temperature is plunging far below zero, the wind screams across a treeless steppe, and massive glaciers are grinding their way down the continent. Now, imagine facing this apocalypse without a thick coat of fur. This was the ultimate evolutionary paradox of our ancestors. As early humans evolved in the sweltering heat of sub-Saharan Africa, they shed their dense body hair to sweat more efficiently, a cooling mechanism that allowed them to run down prey in the burning sun. But as the Earth plunged into the deepest freeze in planetary history, that very same evolutionary triumph became a lethal liability. You are a naked ape in the middle of the Ice Age. How do you survive? Today, we are looking at the brutal arms race against hypothermia, a battle that forced human beings to hack their own biology, master complex chemistry, and engineer survival from the bones of monsters. The populations that survived didn't just hide in caves, they conquered the cold. And the story of how they did it reveals why you are sitting here today, while other human species faded into the frozen earth. Chapter 1. The Biological Vault, Brown Fat. Before they could build shelters or master clothing, the first line of defense had to be the human body itself. If you look at the Neanderthals, our formidable Ice Age cousins who dominated Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, you see a species completely biologically weaponized against the frost. They evolved massive, barrel-shaped chests and heavy, shortened limbs. This wasn't an accident. By minimizing their body's surface area to volume ratio, they trapped core heat inside, turning themselves into walking thermal vaults. But physical shape wasn't enough. Inside their bodies, they possessed a hidden biological furnace known as brown adipose tissue, or brown fat. Unlike normal white fat, which simply stores calories, brown fat is highly thermogenic. When triggered by the cold, a specific protein inside the mitochondria of these brown fat cells effectively short-circuits the normal energy cycle. Instead of using food to create standard cellular energy, it burns lipid stores directly to blast out pure, non-shivering heat. This metabolic engine was so critical that living in prolonged extreme cold actually forced their bodies to recruit and grow more brown fat, embedding cold tolerance directly into their physiology. Chapter 2. The Caloric Trap, Rabbit Starvation. But here is the catch. Running a biological furnace at maximum capacity burns a staggering number of calories, and out on the frozen tundra, finding the right kind of calories was a matter of life and death. You might think that hunting a deer and eating your fill of meat would save you. It wouldn't. In fact, it would kill you faster. During the brutal winters, wild animals burn through their own fat reserves, leaving behind nothing but highly lean muscle. If a human eats an overwhelmingly lean meat diet without enough fat or carbohydrates, their liver and kidneys become rapidly overwhelmed by the massive influx of nitrogen. The bloodstream fills with toxic levels of ammonia and urea, triggering a terrifying condition known as protein poisoning or rabbit starvation. You would suffer from catastrophic diarrhea, plummeting heart rates, and relentless fatigue. You could consume 10,000 calories of lean meat a day, your stomach painfully distended, and you would literally starve to death while eating. To survive, ancient humans became obsessed with fat. They aggressively cracked open every bone they found to scoop out the dense marrow, and they hunted the ultimate caloric prize, the woolly mammoth. A single mammoth yielded up to 2.4 metric tons of highly dense meat and insulating blubber. Because you couldn't drag a multi-ton carcass across the tundra, early humans engineered complex cold smoking techniques right where the animal fell, preserving thousands of pounds of life-saving fat for the darkest months of the year. Chapter 3. Paleolithic Chemistry, Fire. But calories alone couldn't hold back the biting frost. They needed external heat. For hundreds of thousands of years, early hominins probably just relied on natural wildfires, capturing a burning branch and hoping it wouldn't rain. But around 400,000 years ago, archaic humans pulled off a technological miracle. They learned to manufacture fire on demand. At an ancient site in England, archaeologists discovered that early humans were intentionally gathering iron pyrite, a mineral that wasn't even naturally available in that specific area. They carried these rocks for miles because they knew that striking iron pyrite against flint generates a shower of sparks burning at over 700 degrees Celsius. And they didn't stop there. They ventured into Paleolithic chemistry. In France, Neanderthals collected chunks of manganese dioxide. While many assumed this was just a black pigment used for body paint, we now know it was a combustion catalyst. By grinding up this mineral and sprinkling it over wood shavings, they artificially lowered the ignition temperature of their tinder from 350 degrees down to 250 degrees Celsius. This meant a weak spark could instantly take hold, even in the damp, freezing wind. Once they had that fire, they couldn't afford to lose it while migrating. So, they harvested a parasitic tree growth called Fomes fomentarius, or tinder fungus. The soft flesh of this mushroom can hold a smoldering ember alive for days without erupting into a full flame. Ancient hunters carried these glowing chunks of fungus in leather pouches, literally keeping a captive fire strapped to their belts as they crossed the glaciers. Yet, even with fire and fat, the relentless wind of the mammoth steppe would still freeze a human solid in hours. Out on the plains, there were no caves to hide in and no trees to build with. The solution was one of the most breathtaking feats of prehistoric engineering ever discovered. They used the mammoths themselves. At sites like Mezerich in Ukraine, built around 15,000 years ago, early humans constructed massive fortresses made entirely of bone. To build a single dwelling, they took the massive, heavy lower jawbones of mammoths and interlocked them upside down in a circle to form a completely solid, mortarless foundation. Above this, they stacked long bones and pelvises to form the walls. For the roof, they took dozens of enormous, curved mammoth tusks, sometimes hollowing out pieces of ivory to act as connecting sleeves to lace the tusks together into a perfect architectural vault. A single one of these structures contained the bones of nearly 95 individual mammoths, weighing several tons. Draped heavily in animal hides with a roaring hearth in the center, these bone fortresses completely sealed out the glacial winds. Inside, they didn't just survive, they thrived, trading amber jewelry and even painting mammoth skulls with red ochre to use as massive percussive drums. Chapter 4: The Ultimate Weapon, the Needle. But what finally decided the fate of the human race wasn't fire, or fat, or even fortresses of bone. The ultimate weapon in the war against the cold, the one invention that allowed modern humans to conquer the globe while the Neanderthals went extinct, was a tiny, delicate sliver of bone, the eyed needle. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals survived using thick animal pelts draped over their shoulders like capes. But a cape is an incredibly inefficient thermal barrier. Lacking tight seams, freezing winds easily ripped through the gaps, forcing their bodies to burn massive amounts of energy just to maintain a baseline temperature. This severely limited their ability to stand still in the snow and wait for prey in an ambush hunt. Then, somewhere between 40,000 and 50,000 years ago, Homo sapiens weaponized the art of tailoring. Using delicate awls and eyed needles carved from animal bone, they began piercing thick hides and threading them with sinew. This meant they weren't just wearing blankets anymore. They were engineering complex, multi-layered garments. They created the first thermal underwear, a tightly fitted base layer designed to trap a continuous, unbroken pocket of radiant body heat right against the skin. Over this, they layered highly specialized outer shells. We know from archaeological sites that modern humans specifically hunted wolverines. Why wolverines? Because wolverine fur is biologically unique in its ability to shed hoarfrost and block lethal wind chill. Modern humans were stitching tightly tailored wolverine ruffs around their faces to protect their most exposed flesh from instant frostbite. This single breakthrough changed everything. By creating completely enclosed, wearable microclimates, our ancestors decoupled themselves from the limitations of the weather. They could hunt longer, travel further, and endure temperatures that would have killed a Neanderthal in minutes. The line between total extinction and the future of humanity wasn't drawn by sheer muscle or brute force. It was drawn by the precise, unbroken stitch of a bone needle pulled tight against the frozen wind. So, what do you think was the most impressive survival tactic of our ancestors? Was it hacking their own biology or creating the first tailored clothing? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into our brutal, frozen past, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another deep dive into human history.